Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now Bitcoin is seeing reduced selling pressure as expected, but we're running into this important range of resistance that we need to be paying attention to. On top of that, the Bitcoin long positions are right now seeing a perfect V-shaped recovery, so I'll be explaining exactly what that means for Bitcoin later in this video, and I'll also provide you an update on some other Bitcoin charts that we need to be paying attention to later in the video as well. So make sure you're sticking around all the way to the end of this video so that you're not missing out on any of this important information. And just before we jump into it, make sure to leave a like on the video down below. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well subscribe with notifications turned on for more updates just like this every single day. But with all of that out of the way, let's get straight to what this video is about. It's right here on the Bitcoin US dollar chart on the 3-hour time frame. And as you can see here, Bitcoin formed a bullish divergence on this chart that I talked about yesterday on the channel. And at this point right here, I let you know that it's very likely Bitcoin is going to see reduced selling pressure in the short term, at least over the next few days, talking about either some sort of sideways consolidation or perhaps a slight bounce to the upside. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now, just reduced selling pressure. But with that being said, on the smaller time frames like this 3-hour chart, for example, we haven't necessarily confirmed a new uptrend just yet, because technically speaking, we are forming lower highs and lower lows. So technically we are still in a downtrend in the shorter term until we can finally start breaking into higher highs and higher lows. And before we can start a new uptrend here in the short term, Bitcoin would first need to break back above this price range right here, which was previously massive support for the Bitcoin price. As you can see, throughout the second half of October and the beginning of November, the Bitcoin price was constantly bouncing along this exact range of support. And we had one last bounce a few days ago before we dipped below this range of support, which at that stage, technically speaking, that was a bearish signal. And so right now, this is really an important moment for Bitcoin, because if we can reclaim this price range and get back above the top of this range, which by the way, the top of this price range is coming in at around $60,000 US per Bitcoin, and the bottom of this price range is coming in at around 58,000. So basically, if Bitcoin can get above 60,000 US dollars, then we are looking very good. And that would also set us up for a potential inverse head and shoulders pattern, especially if Bitcoin can flip that into support once again. So obviously that is the bullish scenario here. That is what we need to see in order for Bitcoin to continue any sort of recovery to the upside. But if Bitcoin fails to get above that $60,000 level right there and fails to hold above that level, like what we saw right here, then in that case, this short-term downtrend could very well continue for another leg to the downside. But with that being said, if we do end up seeing another dip back to the downside, it's very likely that if we do play out another dip, that would lead us into the bottom for this Bitcoin correction if we haven't bottomed already. If Bitcoin can break back above this price range and put in a new higher high and start forming another higher low, then it's very likely that the bottom is already in, coming in at around 55,500. But as I just mentioned, if Bitcoin fails to get above this price range and we put in a new low, then that next potential leg to the downside would likely take Bitcoin down towards these other levels of support that I've been discussing for quite a while now on the channel. For starters, we've got huge support coming in at around 53 to 54,000. That's simply because this was previous resistance. And also the moment Bitcoin broke back above this level towards the beginning of October, we flipped that into support. So this has already been confirmed as support, talking about 53 to 54K once again. But anything below that, we've also got huge support at the 120-day SMA coming in at approximately 51,500 right now. But obviously at the moment, you can see that it is ascending to the upside. So if Bitcoin does play out another dip to the downside, then at that stage, it could be coming in at more like 52 to 53,000, which are obviously prices not too far below where I've just mentioned. And on top of that, looking in the daily RSI, we're getting very close to the bottom of the daily RSI band, closer towards oversold territories. Even though we're very close, we haven't technically hit the same level of support that we've bounced from all of these other market bottoms for Bitcoin. So with that in mind, technically speaking, there is a little bit more room to the downside, but that room to the downside is very limited. And one thing you also have to keep in mind is if everyone is looking at the same thing on the chart, so let's just say if everyone's looking at that $53,000 level of support and planning to buy a lot of Bitcoin at 53,000, then Bitcoin in that case would simply not reach 53,000. We would bounce before we reach that level, because people usually decide to front run major support, just like how they like to sell a little bit under a major resistance level. So to summarize this analysis so far, if Bitcoin can start breaking above $60,000 very soon, then it's quite likely that the bottom for this correction is already in. But if not, if we get another rejection from this point, then it's very likely that the bottom is not too far away, possibly towards 53 to 54,000. And looking at the Bitcoin long positions on the Bitfinex exchange on the 4-hour time frame, and as you can see here, the long positions are right now agreeing with what I'm seeing on the charts in terms of a Bitcoin bottom either already in or getting very close. Because after seeing that huge steep drop off in the long positions over around a 7 to 8 day time period, period when Bitcoin was correcting to the downside. Over the last 3 days, these long positions have opened back up again. In fact, just measuring this out, over the past 3 days, around 2,600 Bitcoin have entered into new long positions. And at the current Bitcoin price, that equates to roughly around 150 million US dollars worth of long positions that have been opened over the past 3.5 days. So this simply means that traders are beginning to flip a little bit more bullish on the Bitcoin price, as we are showing signs that we are approaching a bottom if we haven't seen it already. And on top of that, looking in the Bitcoin Fear and Greed Index, yesterday you can see here that we plunged into fear for the first time in quite a while actually, and we hit levels as low as 34 just the other day. But what we have here today is a rebound back to the upside towards the neutral zone. But according to this indicator, we're technically still sitting in fear right now. And for any of the new viewers out there, basically when we're sitting in fear, those are usually some good times to be accumulating Bitcoin. Of course, not financial advice, that's just telling you historically what this indicator means. And usually when we see things like extreme greed in this indicator, that could be a sign that we're due for some sort of bearish price action coming soon. So in its simplest form, when we see greed, that acts as a sell signal. When we see fear, that acts as a buy signal. But keep in mind, this indicator can remain in fear for even up to a couple months at a time. And same as remaining in extreme greed, this indicator can remain in extreme greed, especially during a bull market, for even up to a couple months at a time before we finally see a correction. So I certainly would not be using this indicator all by itself, but I'm definitely using it within a larger group of indicators. And on top of that, looking at the Bitcoin funding rates across all of these exchanges right now, they are very neutral, but some of these funding rates are even negative, as you can see, and that is actually a bullish sign, because when the funding rates are negative, that acts as an extra fee that the short positions have to pay, and that fee goes to the long positions. So that is right, if the funding rates are negative and you're in a long position, you get paid money just for being in that long position. And then the other way around, when these funding rates are positive, the long positions have to pay the short positions whatever the funding rate fee is at that time. So the further positive these funding rates go to the upside, the more expensive it is to maintain a long position, because these funding rates get charged usually every 8 hours. But at the other end of the spectrum, when these funding rates drop back to the downside and even into negative territory, the further negative these funding rates go, the more expensive it becomes to maintain a short position. And so with that explanation in mind, all you need to know is negative funding rates are bullish for Bitcoin because they incentivize long positions being opened and short positions being closed, adding an extra buying pressure to the Bitcoin price. And when the funding rates are positive, technically speaking, that is a bearish signal, because really positive funding rates incentivize new short positions to be opened, and it also incentivizes traders to close any long positions, which will act as a selling pressure to the Bitcoin price. And just before we wrap up this video, another important point of resistance to pay attention to in case we do break above this range of resistance is simply the 130 exponential moving average on the 4-hour time frame. Currently, that is coming in at around 61,500 US dollars, but it is descending to the downside, as you can see. So by the time we might make it up towards that level, it could be coming in at more like 61,000. And also when you're bringing out the Fibonacci retracement tool, as you can see here, we've got the 38.2% Fibonacci level coming in just below 61,000. So at around that 61 to 61,500 dollar level, that could also act as a bit of short-term resistance for Bitcoin. And anything above that, we've got the golden pocket coming in at around 64,000 US dollars. But keep in mind, these prices are only Fibonacci levels on the chart if this right here is the bottom for this correction. If Bitcoin gets a rejection at one of these levels and forms a new low, then of course we would have to readjust these Fibonacci levels to fit in that new low wherever it might be. And if you haven't already, make sure you're following me over on my Twitter for extra crypto updates throughout the day in real time. And the link to my official Twitter account is in the description down below and also in the pinned comment. But anyway, that is it for this video. If you enjoyed or got something valuable out of this video, make sure to leave a like down below. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well subscribe with notifications turned on for more updates just like this every single day. As always, I really do appreciate all of your support in the channel at the moment. I can't thank you guys enough. And before clicking off, make sure you're checking out one of these uploads that are popping up right here if you haven't seen them already. But anyway, that is really everything I've saved for this video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.